Greetings, Guardians. My name is Bife here. We're back with the kind of weekly check-in slash check-up on the seasonal story of the Season of the Witch. And we are at week 4, which means that, as is predictable, things have started to slow down. I'm going to go ahead and give you the lowdown of my critique on this particular week first, and then I'm going to talk about the actual story bits. Because you know what, there is a lot to talk about as far as the story implications are concerned, but the story itself this week was actually relatively short. I think that there's a certain portion of people who are actually fine with this, considering that it's less mandatory busy work. The activities you actually had to play this week, including nothing more than a lost sector, 2 patrols, and some kills in the throne world. But still, it was a shorter week. Regardless, there is a lot to talk about as far as the actual content covered here, so we'll talk about that today. So, what is it about week 4? Every single season feels as though it kind of starts to peter out at the midsection of week 4. And, you know, there's a lot of stuff going on in Destiny nowadays at week 4. Trials of Osiris is back, we have the Grandmaster Nightfalls out again, we've got a lot of stuff going on as far as just the game generally, and players are probably deep into some of those activities. I know some people are at that point where they're really getting into Crota's End at this moment, especially those who didn't get to play it first time around. But the story just sort of peters out, and it's been that way for quite a few different seasons. Season of the Plunder in particular comes to mind, and, well, I suppose Season of the Seraph as well. There's a lot of these weeks where it feels as though the story is on hold, and as though there is just this moment where everybody sits there and says, "Oh, something big is coming, better look out for it. Doesn't look like it's gonna be good." And at very least this 4th week, even though it was quiet, has dodged that trope. I think there's nothing more frustrating for me personally when that happens in the story. Just that moment of sitting there and being like, haha, we have bad things on the horizon, come back next week to see what that is. That's not story. That's barely even a teaser for the next week. And luckily, the story doesn't fall into that trap. I do wish that there was more content to actually do as far as the narrative is concerned, but then again, there is a balance to be made here. I wish there was more story content in pure terms, but I also think that having less of the busy work is actually good. Let me put it this way. I think that it was done best in Season of the Chosen. When you actually sat down in Season of the Chosen, by week 4, I believe we were going after Ixal the Far-Reaching. Either that, or we had suddenly got to the point where we had the cutscene where Osiris was chastising Crow after Crow had momentarily killed a Scion to save Commander Zavala's life. This was before the big actual final cutscene, of course. This was just the ink blot cutscene. The point is, big things happened in week 4 of that season, and we still had a lot of stuff to actually do. It was still like a fascinating unfolding of the story, and I kind of wish that other seasons were able to maintain that pace. I'd love a season where every single week feels as though it's super consequential, but also I dislike a week where we're basically given a task to do the seasonal activity, and then the narrative basically extends to, hey, check back next week, I think something bad's gonna happen. So it's about that balance, you know? I think that the ideal is always going to be a cinematic mission, or some kind of cinematic take on things, and I do wish that there was more of that for this. Because even though it is only just a patrol and a lost sector, and even though there are all these moments where, you know, you get this unique Wrathborn encounter, it's not particularly engaging. Then again, I suppose the story is supposed to be done by everyone, so it's not exactly meant to be hard or particularly trying. What I would say is this. What we did get, even though there wasn't a lot of it, was actually very consequential. And this is the thing that I do need to praise Bungie on, because, you know, it's really cool to see them drop a story hint at the beginning of a season, and it's even cooler to see them actually pick that up and expand upon it. And the story hint that was dropped this time around was this moment from the very opening cutscene where Eris starts naming individuals within the ritual.
Argar, Zeatar, Sel, this is...
For those of you who don't know, those names are the names of worm gods. Arca was the Worm of Secrets, killed by Alrix, so that Alrix might learn the secret of communing with the deep. Sita was the Mother Worm, taken as a prisoner by Rulk and given immortality alongside her brood, in return for eternal servitude at the side of the Disciple. And Cell. Cell for the longest time was unknown, but last week we started getting dialogue like this. Take a listen.
Eris, your ritual called on the Hive worm gods, and there were some I didn't recognize.
Not all are Hive. Cell, Aura, Blaze. They were Asa's sisters, dead or lost. She whispered their names to me, and I invoked them alongside the worm gods, both slain and living.
I see. Asa is one of our greatest allies. I just hope she finds time to rest.
So Eris invoked the name of some proto-worm gods alongside the other Hive worm gods, which is pretty fascinating, but it makes sense. It appears that all these names have been invoked because they desire revenge of some kind. Arca, in his dead state, would most likely desire revenge against Oryx, the Taken King, who killed him so that the secret of communing with the deep could be obtained. Sita would probably desire revenge against Rulk, who knew that she had no choice but to accept and forced her to serve as a source of power for eons untold. Cell and all the others that are named by Eris in the ritual are Asa's sisters, and all of them have a desire to see revenge against the Witness. The Witness who, of course, set all of the worms against each other and caused them to break their strong familial bonds in the most terrifying and bloodthirsty manner, where family member was set against family member. This is the really fascinating part about this connection. Eris, in a strange way, has kind of created her own pantheon of worm gods, specifically based around the desire for vengeance, and that specifically tie into her. And the thing is, this could have been just a really cool throwaway reference, but as it turns out, it's not, and the reason that it's not is because Asa is much more intimately linked into the ritual. This is the bit that I'm really enjoying about the story. It seems to continue to throw curveballs at us. It's not the biggest and most revelatory thing, it's not action-packed, there is no mission behind all this, but I do think that it's still good story as is, and at very least, a lot of the fat has been trimmed away. Whilst I sat there and said I would love a story mission to reveal all of this, I am also glad that it's not just something that comes as an add-on to the end of another round of Spire of Savathûn. Good as that activity is, it gets boring when you're told to do it over and over again. The point is this. When I went back from the Throne World and saw that I had to go to the dive tank, that took me by surprise. I honestly thought that it was an error at first, and so I checked the Athenaeum to see if Ikora was there. Nope. Turns out she was at the dive tank, and lo and behold, she's not talking to Eris. Take a look at this.
Welcome back, Sloane.
It's good to be back. But from Asa's impressions, I guess this isn't a social call.
Unfortunately not. What do you know about Eris's plan?
Only that she and Asa are bound by some kind of hive ritual. I was against it, but like Asa said, sometimes we have to become our enemies to defeat them.
That's exactly what concerns me. Sloane, I need to speak with her.
No. Asa's done enough for the Vanguard. She's barely recovered from...
I will speak. Bound by covenant, tithes held between a current.
You're helping Eris contain the energy from the tithes.
Eroding, hollowing, release in time, or remain bound without end.
If the ritual goes on for too long, Eris will be trapped as a hive.
And Asa will be corrupted. Twisted into... something horrible. Ikora, I'll tear the tower to the ground before I let anything happen to her.
It won't come to that, Sloane. I promise.
Now, Arsa's words there are a little bit unclear, as they almost always are, because Arsa speaks in a rather unclear tone and often uses allegory or just vague phrases that communicate an approximation of what she's trying to say, but not the most clear definition of it. Luckily for us, Eris Morn clears it up immediately. Take a listen to what she says on the holoprojector.
Guardian, I have been taking time to reflect on Ikora's conversation with Sloane and Asa. I knew there would be torment in embracing the Hive and the poisonous squall of their violence. I thought myself prepared for it. I have lived long in shadow, and the shrieking horrors of the Hive would provide solace from my quotidian dreams. When I named the worms, I evoked only their resonance, but Asa responded. She is a willing and vital catalyst to empower my morph, but her pain is real and immense. My aim in this grotesque conversion was to shoulder the risk myself. But feeding from Asa's suffering, that is a line I did not think I would cross. Guardian, keep by my side so that we may soon leave these deeds behind us. I refuse to become something I am not. The worm gods extract their sustenance from between what is and what might be, between the actual and the possible. When the Hive made their ill-fated pact with these worms, they gained immortality and the power to make of the world as they willed. Few beings in this universe derive their power this way. The Queen of the Reef believes it is the same method as the Ahamkara.
The Wish Dragons were too dangerous to exist.
So is Xivu Arath. My connection to Asa is regrettable. But this was the only path towards my goal. I invoked the worms, and she answered.
And did you know that this would happen?
It was possible, as all things are possible with this kind of power. This bond has not been attempted since the worm gods made their bargain with Witness. Asa may have rejected it then, but the desire to overpower the universe with one's will is woven into her being. She is not beholden to it, not addicted or enslaved. The deep is not her nature. But I have tangled myself within this desire through the use of the staff's larva. Now I possess her power.
This could kill both of you.
That risk is ours to take.
Much as she might represent the most direct form of nightmare fuel in the entire game for me, I can't deny that Asa truly is the hero in this story. Yes, Eris's actions of choosing to undertake this because it's the necessary thing are absolutely heroic too, but Asa, as Eris said, was a willing participant in this, and she is shouldering all of the immense pain that is being undertaken by Eris in the ritual. It's not entirely up to Asa, I'm sure. Eris probably experiences something during the transformation in particular, but Asa is shouldering the brunt of it, and she didn't have to do that. She's already been exhausted by her efforts to communicate, and so the amount of effort that it's taking to take on all of this extra burden must be utterly remarkable. The other point being made, which is even more worrying, of course, is the idea that it could all change her. And I think that this is something which ties directly into Eris's decisions that she may have to make at the end of the season. There is a lot of speculative stuff running around talking about how Eris might in fact have to accept the greater bargain of permanently becoming a Hive in order to defeat Xivu Arath, and if that's true, then Asa will probably go with her. At that point, we have a whole new ballgame on our hands. I just want you to imagine for a second, you have Xivu Arath's side of things, as well as the three worm gods that are still loyal on that particular side of it, namely Aya, and Yul. You then have Savathun's brood, which uses the light. And then you have Eris Morn's brood, which has a whole new worm god and a whole new hive god. If that does happen to be the way that the story is turning, We are about to enter one of the most interesting eras of Hive history. I don't think that this would actually happen. I'm honestly at this point quite unsure of what would happen, because who knows, it might just be too much for Arsa and she might just die. But if Arsa does permanently transform into a worm god, the consequences for everyone involved would be dire. For starters, the Hive would be in an enormous amount of trouble because the God of Vengeance is now alive, powerful, and well, and is honestly coming after the rest of them voraciously. I think that if Eris did permanently transform, she would be forced to accept that role and would relentlessly hunt Xivu Arath and Savathûn for the rest of their days. But the Worm Gods might also have something to say about that. A new god has accepted the way of the sword logic, and whilst I'll go into a video later on this week about how the sword logic and the final shape as the Witness presents it aren't quite the same, the similar magics of the deep and the logics upon which it's founded are what was originally presented to the Worm Gods, if I'm remembering correctly. And so Arsa might be in a place of self-loathing and resentment for the rest of her days. Then you have to consider what Sloane might have to say, not to mention all the other Guardians in the tower that trusted Eris. You have Ikora, you have Zavala, you have the Exo Stranger. There are so many characters that will be definitively mad at Eris for making such a move, and yet if it is necessary, it is something she will have to do. If we need it to defeat Xivu Arath, and if we need it to get the information required to cross the portal. With all of that being said, I think that one thing has become incredibly clear. Arsa's part to play in this story is not completely over. But in this moment, as we know that Arsa is involved, the stakes have once again been raised. We now know that the Proto-Worm God is also risking her life, or at very least, everything that she deems valuable, in order to assist Eris and us. If I'm to really speculate on things and to tell you something that is truly conjecture, I think that this is a noble commentary on Arsa above all other people. And the reason I say that is because Arsa's name, as Eris says, was invoked in essence and tone, but it wasn't invoked in a manner that required her to be bound into the ceremony. And yet, Arsa is here, taking part. And there's a part of me that wonders if that isn't a noble deed, but there's a part of me that also wonders whether that's Arsa taking on this great task with some measure of guilt in her own heart. The reason I say that is because Arsa clearly knows how much distress her recommendation has brought. I would say that especially with the link that she has with Deputy Commander Sloane, Arsa is able to tap into and understand the discourse that's been going around, and if she was able to even vaguely pick up on the reactions of Saint 14 and Lord Saladin to this plan, I imagine that she feels guilty. If she knew even a fraction of what happened to Osiris, it might make this action make just a little bit more sense. Why Arsa would willingly take part in this other than these reasons, I don't know. Maybe it is vengeance for her sisters. Maybe it is simply so that she can assist everyone and ensure that we all see her tomorrow. I don't know what the reason is, but the action itself is unquestionably selfless. I suppose we simply have to hope that Arsa does survive. Otherwise, who knows? We only have ourselves to blame, and there's a whole new Hive problem lying around the corner. Anyway, that's our wrap-up and our check-in on the weekly story and what's going on. If you are a Bungie dev and you are listening to this, I hope these videos have been useful, because I'm going to try and do this every season. This is something that I may do going forward, but it's something that, I won't lie, it does come out of the concern generated over Lightfall. It's something that I will do, partly to keep people up to date, and it's also something I'll do to make sure that you guys are always receiving critique, because I know that that will assist, and I want to make sure that nothing is missing the net. Anyway, if you are watching this video and you're a regular listener, thank you very much for watching it indeed, and if you did enjoy the video, go ahead and leave a like. And in the comments, tell me why you think Arsa took part in this. She didn't have to, she was a willing participant, she chose to. Even with her name being invoked by Eris, it wasn't in a manner that required her to take part in the way that she has. So why do you think she did it? Leave your thoughts down below in the comments section. If you want more lore and more story from the Season of the Witch and from Destiny 2, go ahead and hit subscribe and the bell next to subscribe to turn on those email notifications. But as per usual, know that your viewership, as always, is quite enough for me, and that in the meantime, my name is Bife. Parodasia Arastra. I'll see you, Starside.